moving forward, what are the main changes that you think people should expect, especially in the American media and culture, without Trump in office anymore? Obviously, we had this knife edge that it was, could it go one way, could it go another? And 4 more years, we could have probably had a good understanding of what to expect, just more of the same. But now that he's no longer there, what do you reckon is going to happen?
It is going to be so demented this year that people have no idea what's coming. It's been, 2 weeks into the Biden administration, and we're already seeing, like, they're talking about putting on second masks. And, what we're just seeing with GameStop and so on and so forth. The thing with chaos and anarchy are not synonymous, but I'm a fan of both, is you never know, where it's going to be coming. One of my favorite moments of the Trump presidency was there was some dispute between him and the Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi. And there was an entire busload of Democratic congressmen, and they were going to take a plane to visit an American base, I think maybe in Iraq or something. And Trump, as commander-in-chief, pulled the authorization for the military plane. So they had to bring the bus back to the Capitol, and they all had to get off the bus, like the school trip's been canceled. And we're just sitting there peeing our pants as all these congressmen just didn't know it, because they had to get off the bus, and that had to be on video, and it was just a complete humiliation. No one could have predicted that. So I think without Trump, without this centralized figure, we are going to see things like you were talking about, this Wall Street bet stuff, so many more attempts and successful executions of things that no one saw coming and are going to be hilarious. And that will demonstrate how much of the claim to elite control is completely fraudulent, that these people are not better, that they're not particularly smarter. They're certainly not more moral. And the more that's exposed, the more hopeful people will become for the future. Because it's one thing to say, look, you're going to be ruled by a bunch of thieves. Fine. Maybe you need that. Maybe you need those thieves in charge to make sure, like, I'd rather have the thieves than the murderers, right? But let's be honest that you are thieves. And that, I think, would be a good starting point to go forward. And I think that's increasingly happening.
What's the difference between a Trump administration and a Biden administration? Why does a Biden administration garner more chaos than a Trump one? I would have thought the Trump one would have been more chaotic.
Because with Trump, people who would have disdain for the system, a large part of them felt represented. They felt, okay, we have someone who thinks like I do. We have someone who hates the things I hate. He's speaking for me. I have a voice. Now they feel like, okay, no one's speaking for me. I have no commitment to this system. I have no investment here. I'm being told I'm a white supremacist insurrectionist on a daily basis. So, okay, if that's how you regard, if you regard me as a Nazi, if you're going to read me out of the human race, then we can't really go forward having a conversation. I don't want to sit down and have a conversation with a Nazi. Well, I did for my book, but not certainly in a collegial kind of way, like, oh, where your kids going to school? Oh, nice seeing you, so on and so forth. So I think it's going to be much more systemic breaking down. And we're seeing in Europe. So if you follow European elections, it's becoming harder and harder for different countries to form governing coalitions. Belgium was the great example where there's two halves of Belgium, if I'm getting this country right. One was socialist, the other, now the white nationalists were in charge because they speak different languages. You're not going to be able to sit down and work with each other. We had this in Thuringia in Germany, where they had a negative coalition, meaning the far left and the AfD, the nationalists, had enough seats that between them no one could make a majority, and they didn't know what to do. So, and now in Italy, what's happening is, for a long time you had Berlusconi's party, right? He was the center-right party, Forza Italia. They were the right-wing ones. And then after he kind of fell away, you had Matteo Salvini, the League. You guys are Nazis, you guys are Nazis, you guys are Nazis. They got into government. Well, what happened then is, now that they're recalled the Nazis, they're losing some support, but the neo-fascists are gaining support. So when you are forcing people to pay the costs of having views that are extreme, at a certain point, they're going to be like, you know what? I am going to check these people out because that's who you're calling me. And they're the ones who want to talk to me and you don't. This is a very dangerous game these people are playing. And they are so up their own ass and are so not used to thinking strategically that all they know how to do is just repeat what they've said before. And all I could do is caution and be like, you are doing a very dangerous thing. And I'm saying this as an anarchist who does not believe in politics.
That feels like an element of the thread that we were talking about earlier on, that you have such a rapid pace emergent
Yes.
on the bottom, and you have such a big lumbering Goliath up at the top.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And this huge disconnect. And this Goliath is complete. If there's like, I'm a big zoology person, and the thing that brings down giraffes are ticks. Because a giraffe, the surface area of a giraffe is enormous. That means you could have so many ticks on it, draining of blood, giving it disease. It's going to be a lot easier for that than for, let's suppose, a lion, where if the giraffe kicks it in the head at once, it's dead. So this is, I think they're completely oblivious. They're always tell themselves in these words that they're on the right side of history. You know, if someone comes up to me with a knife, telling them I'm on the right side of history is really going to be a very weak tool. And if it is a war, just saying I'm the good guys is really not going to gain you anything.
So that's what's happening emergently. That's what sort of the population is feeling. What about top down? What do you see in terms of administrative changes, or I guess top down cultural changes?
I'm shocked by how quickly they've come to realize that, wait a minute, we didn't win. Because they thought, very sincerely, we got rid of Trump, everything could go back to normal, unity. And then it took a couple of weeks, and they're like, holy crap, none of these Trump people, who they described as Trump people, like, you know, they would call Glenn Greenwald a Trump person, none of these people missed a beat. They're not going home. They're not going anywhere. They've become even more radicalized. They've become even more contemptuous of us. What do we do? Well, they're not really. They are just. I think at this point they're still confused, and they're going to become a lot more confused, or they're going to start implementing smart strategies, which I wouldn't bet on, if they know it's good for them. And I don't say that as a threat. I'm saying this as someone who's very afraid.
Are you seeing this with the amount of executive orders that Biden's put in, for instance, that it's just a hammer blow? It's using.
I'm seeing. Here's another example. Like for 3 years, we heard that. The 2016 election was, undermined by Russia, and Trump was impeached over this, and Russia. There's a conspiracy, and there was collusion between Trump and Putin. Within a week of this past election, every corporate media outlet was saying this has been the most secure election in history. It is not possible to make that statement with that quickly. You haven't investigated. It might be true, but you couldn't in a week do all the investigations, see all the mistakes, see whatever was fixed. And how was it that President Trump and all these Republican governors oversaw it going from Russia to now it's completely secure? This is a clearly, and to dispute this in any way is grounds from getting you removed from social media, and you should be silenced. And now you believe in insurrection and civil war and all this other stuff. This is not the approach of an elite that feels secure and in control. This is someone. If you and me are having an argument in your house, I'll say my piece, you'll say your piece. Maybe our voices will get raised. If I'm shoving you out of the house and locking the door, I don't feel safe. And that's what they are trying to do. The problem is they don't really own the house anymore. Like, they do not have a monopoly over the mechanisms of conversation. And that, when you have an edifice built on deception, being able to speak even critically is an enormous existential threat to it.
Are we seeing, again, this is another one of those threads that appears to be tying together, the same way as executive orders, the same way as restrictions with regards to speech, the same way as the press restricting people's movements, the same way as Robin Hood restricting people's trades? Is this the last vestiges of the old guard trying to hold on to their version of power, or how they used to be able to deploy power? And it seems like if they were to go about it in a more smart way, this is the 1984 element of A Brave New World. The fact that there is only so far that you can try to cajole and coerce and tempt people into things until you need to get the hammer out and hit them over the head.
Yeah.
And we're seeing a lot more hammers appear. And that, as you said, is when it's really, really obvious that someone's decided, okay, gloves are off, rules are broken. I need to press the fucking ejector seat button.
And it's also very expensive in the sense of, if you and I have a fight, whatever, hey, sorry, man, I was really upset. No, it's cool. If you punch me in the face or I punch you in the face, you can never undo that. And that's also shown me several things. One, you're a person who's capable of violence against me, or vice versa. And you're someone who is can do that again in the future. This is not, it goes very hard to reverse that and to try to have some kind of relationship that's at all based on respect or working together. It's like, all right, you did this to me once. Also, now there's an enormous pressure. I have to make sure I'm not in that position again because I'm sorry, it was a mistake. It's like, you know what? If I get punched a second time, at some point, it's going to be part of my fault that I trusted you. So this is when they have to use this cudgel, like you pointed out, or this hammer. This is enormously expensive for them in terms of future relationships, because that is something that can't be unseen or undone. You can't unring that bell.
And it's not just necessarily the person who gets the cudgel out.
Right.
It's everybody else within that domain. And perhaps this is why we're seeing such a proliferation of Telegram and Discord and Signal. You know, I can't remember who it is.
Let me give you a great example of this. Hold on. Look, so one of the big things I've been working on this past year was turning people against the police. And I have never seen any population switch its views on a fundamental issue as quickly as, in America at least, conservatives have turned the police. For a very long time, you could not talk to them about it. The police are what keeps us from being, in a state of anarchy, a state of complete violence, everyone would be killing each other. And then all you had to do was a little bit of footage. There was Canada, where they broke into someone's house because they were having like Thanksgiving dinner, whatever it was, and pulled an old man out of the house. And when you see that video, it's like, okay, I can never pretend, some people still can, that, okay, they're keeping us safe. They're just like you and me, good apples. You look at that, you're like, I don't know. You don't have to know anything about politics to know something somewhere has taken a very drastic turn when old people who are not, gun runners or drug dealers or running a brothel are being violently pulled out of their homes by the police. This is not like it's like you're doing accounting and all of a sudden you have like $1 million deficit. It's like, okay, somewhere the math went way wrong.